Good morning, friends. Welcome to Penn Vicarage, and thank you for joining us for our Bible reflection for today on this nice and lovely Thursday morning. Great to see you. I hope you're having a great week, and thank you for being with us today. And today, friends, we are in chapter 9 of the remarkable and amazing book of the prophet Isaiah. So here we go. Isaiah at chapter 29. Ariel, the city where David encamped. Add year to year, let the festivals run their round. Yet I will distress Ariel, and there will be moaning and lamentation, and Jerusalem shall be to me like an Ariel. And like David, I will encamp against you. I'll besiege you with towers, and raise siege works against you. Then deep from the earth shall you speak, and low in the dust shall your words come. Your voice shall come from the ground like the voice of a ghost, and your speech shall whisper out of the dust. But the multitude of your foes shall be like small dust, and a multitude of tyrants like flying chaff. And in an instant, suddenly, you'll be visited by the Lord of hosts, with thunder and earthquake and great noise, with whirlwind and tempest and the flame of a devouring fire. And the multitude of all the Arians of the nations that fight against Ariel, all that fight against her and her stronghold, and who distress her, shall be like a dream, a vision of the night. Just as when a hungry person dreams of eating and wakes up still hungry, or a thirsty person dreams of drinking and wakes up faint, still thirsty, so shall the multitude of the nations be that fight against Mount Zion. Stupefy yourselves and be in a stupor. Blind yourselves and be blind. Be drunk, but not from wine. Stagger, but not from strong drink. For the Lord has poured out upon you a spirit of deep sleep. He's closed your eyes, you prophets, and covered your heads, you seers. The vision of all this has become for you like the words of a sealed document. If it is given to those who can read with the command, read this, they say, we cannot, for it is sealed. And if it is given to those who cannot read, saying, read this, they say, we cannot read. The Lord said, because this people draw near with their mouths and honour me with their lips, while their hearts are far from me, and their worship for me is a human commandment learned by rote, so I will do again the amazing things with this people, shocking and amazing. The wisdom of their wise shall perish, and the discernment of the discerning shall be hidden. Ha, you who hide a plan too deep for the Lord, whose deeds are in the dark, and who say, who sees us, who knows us? You turn things upside down. Shall the potter be regarded as the clay, and the thing that made us say of its maker, he did not make me? Or the thing that formed say of the one who formed it, he has no understanding? Shall not Lebanon be in a very little while become a fruitful field, and the fruitful field be regarded as a forest? On that day the deaf shall hear the words of a scroll, and out of their gloom and darkness the eyes of the blind shall see. The meek shall obtain fresh joy in the Lord, and the neediest people shall exult in the Holy One of Israel. For the tyrant shall be no more, and the scoffer shall cease to be. All those alert to do evil shall be cut off. Those who cause a person to lose a lawsuit, who set a trap for the arbiter in the gate, and without grounds deny justice to the one in the right. Therefore, thus says the Lord, who redeemed Abraham concerning the house of Jacob, no longer shall Jacob be ashamed, no longer shall his face grow pale. For when he sees his children, the work of my hands in his midst, they will sanctify my name. They will sanctify the Holy One of Jacob, and will stand in awe of the God of Israel. And those who err in spirit will come to understanding, and those who grumble will accept instruction. And this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Okay, talks here about Ariel. Now, when I first read Ariel, I keep thinking of the Disney film The Little Mermaid, or perhaps Ariel Automatic. I never heard of this before. It's a unique word used only in Isaiah chapter 29. What is Ariel? Well, almost all scholars would say Ariel is code for Jerusalem. And it's an interesting word for Jerusalem because it can in Hebrew, it can mean three things. Quite clever, this. It can mean city of El, where El means God. So it can mean city of God. It can also mean lion of God. But it can also mean an altar hearth, where something has been burnt up. So it's a clever, it's a really clever word for Jerusalem, because it can mean, as I say, city of God, lion of God, or altar hearth, that which is kind of burnt up when a sacrifice has been made. So it can like a hearth that you might get. So that's really what it's all about. So this is really all about Jerusalem. And essentially, the chapter is in two sections. And each section has like a judgment and a restoration. There were three of those in Isaiah chapter 28. In chapter 29, we have two here. Both times there's a judgment followed by a restoration. So in verses 1 to 8 is the first section, and 1 to 8 is section into 1 to 4 and 5 to 8. Okay, and what essentially the judgment is basically saying, here you are, Ariel, or Jerusalem. You've got all these wonderful festivals, but basically your heart's not in it. And essentially that's what he's saying. It's all about empty religion. They're doing all the right festivals. They're, in a sense, that they've got the form of religion, but kind of denying the power of it. They're doing all the right festivals, but in a sense, it's only skin deep. They're not. It doesn't make any difference to the rest of it. They're not doing it any great joy. They're just doing the festivals. They run their round, but there's kind of nothing in it. And that's in a sense what's going on here. And as a result of that, he says, "You shall be." In verse 2, he said, "And Jerusalem, you shall be to me like an Ariel." So, Jerusalem, you should be a city of God. You should be a land of God, but you've become like an altar hearth where things are being burnt up. Okay. So that's why the word Ariel is such a clever word for Jerusalem, because it can go both ways. And as a result of this, he says towards the end of the judgment, you should be laid low. You should be like dead, like a ghost, and your word should be like a whisper. So the judgment in verses 1 to 4 is because their festivals they're doing them, but there's just skin deep. Because of that, they're going to become like the hearth type Ariel, and they're going to be laid low. Then in verses 5 to 8, you have the restoration. And as with always, it kind of turns it all round again. It goes upside down, that God will deliver them. And he's referring here to when the Assyrians, we keep hearing about them, invaded Judah in year 701. They kind of came down from the north, and they invaded. They took Syria, and they took Ephraim, as we already heard, and they came within a hair's breadth of Jerusalem, but they didn't get through. And what he's saying here in verses 5 to 8 is that, they came in, but I protected them, and the people that stood against Ariel, the people that stood against Jerusalem, God came against them. And in an instant, suddenly, they'll be visited by the Lord of hosts with thunder and earthquake and great noise, and so on. And the multitude of all the nations that fight against Ariel, fight against Stronghold, and who distress her, will be like a dream, like a vision of the night, like a bit like waking up after a bad dream. And that's what it's going to be like. So that's verses 1 to 4 is the judgment because of skin deep religion. Verses 5 to 8 that God says he will protect his people. And then you've got the second section, which is verses 9 through to the end, which is again you've got the judgment and you've got the restoration. And if you read through almost like two verses 9 to 16 is the judgment, and it's kind of two verses at a time. And verses 9 and 10 is about how the people have become, because they're not switched on to God. They've become like drunken people and sleepy people, drunken people staggering around, like sleepy people that kind of can't see anything, and that's how they've become. So, in a sense, they've got no cutting edge. They're not alive. They're just dozing around life. That's kind of how they become. He says. Then in verses 11 and 12, it says they can't read because their eyes are closed and their seals are all sealed up. And then there's that because they've become so immune to what God is saying, they can't hear. And I think we need to hear that ourselves. These are all warnings to us. How stupefied have we become that the word of God doesn't cut home with us these days in the way that it did. Verses 13 and 14, he talks about the truth is all your deeds are like be learned by rote. So rather than learning in your heart, it's all become learned by rote. Just learn verses rather than things from the heart. And I think our faith should be about our hearts as well as our minds. That we don't just know about God, that we actually get to know God in our faith. That faith is not something we learn by rote, but something that becomes alive to us. Then verses 15 and 16, the inner says that you've got people here who know that they're doing things wrong, but they're kind of trying to hide from God. And when things don't go right for them, they argue with God, a bit like clay arguing with the potter, kind of who's in charge around here. But you've got a picture in verses 15 and 16 of people who think that they can, who do deeds in the dark, who say, who sees us, who knows us, we think we can get, as if we can get away with anything as far as God's concerned. So in verses 9 to 16, you have the judgment. But then in verses 17 to the end, you get the restoration. And everything gets turned upside down, that God is going to do something great, that people who can't see, the blind, that they can see, that the needy begin to exalt, those who haven't, the needy begin to exalt in God in verse 17. And in verse 17 again, the tyrant will be a tyrant, will have tyranny no more. And then in verse 22, there'll be no more shame, and that people who in the past have their religion's only been skin deep. In the past, when it's just been learned by rote and it's just been going through the motions, they get people that these people will now sanctify God's name, and God. And at the end it says in verse 24 it says, and those who err in spirit will come to understanding, and those who grumble will accept instruction. So, the clay won't argue with the potter anymore, and that people will be able to see and they will understand again. So again, in the second half of the chapter, verses 9 to the end, you have the judgment and you have the restoration at the end, the good news at the end that God's going to do something great. So it's a remarkable chapter. It took me a long time to understand it. It's all about Ariel, this clever name used for you. They can be the Lion of God, the City of God, but they can also be a burnt out hearth as well. You have two sections where you have the judgment, but you have the restoration following as well. There's a warning here for us against religion, which is just going through the motion. That it should be a heart thing as well. We need to make sure that our eyes are open, to make sure that we're hearing God. We're not searing our consciences. We're hearing what God is doing and be open in our lives to really listening to what God says. Otherwise, it just gets blocked off all the time. It's all about being alive to God. But there's always restoration here, that God will win through, that God is sovereign, that God knows what he's doing. And my friends, that same God is with you and I today. Friends, enjoy your Thursday. God bless you.